and welcome to the Flame and Fiber podcast. My name is Barbara. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry as Diva S. And I want to say hello. Thank you so much for joining me. This is episode. I just got back from the hairdresser, which is why I'm doing my podcast now. I'm even doing before I walk Pearl because I have to wear a hat because I have no hair on top, and if I don't wear a hat, I get sunburned on my head. But I don't want to put a hat on my new hair till after I have done my podcast, so I'm fitting my podcast in. I just walked in the door from getting my hair done, and Dennis needs to go shopping, so I need to take Pearl out. So Pearl is waiting patiently, probably not that patiently, for me to talk to you guys before we have our walk. But anyway, it's episode 57. It's the day after North American Labor Day, although I don't know if Mexico celebrates Labor Day on the first Monday of September, but it's Canadian. It was Canadian and United States Labor Day, and I hope you had a lovely weekend, those of you who do celebrate. And welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for your comments and messages that I've gotten since my last podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And thank you to the new subscribers. Welcome. I almost started this podcast by saying, hello, welcome to Fat Squirrel Speaks. I don't know why I have Amy Beth's voice in my head, and I'm going to start my podcast with her sign on, but it's very strange. If you don't watch Fat Squirrel Speaks, I highly recommend it. I love Amy Beth. She's an amazing knitter and spinner, and a lovely person, and very funny. Very funny. So, anyway. Podcast recommendation, which you guys all have already heard from me before. But anyway, it was as I was walking in here, I was channeling Amy Beth, and I have no idea why. I did contact her. I actually was in contact with her since the last podcast because I realized this is the Fat Squirrel bag. She does bags, and this was the souvenir bag for SSK. And it's the year of the sweater, and so I'm doing lots of sweaters, so I got the big giant one, and I told you in my last podcast that I was really freaked out because I couldn't find this bag when I went downstairs one morning after Pearl had been roaming the house at night, and I found it over by her bed, tucked in a corner, and I was surprised that she hadn't kind of chewed on the zipper part. Well, it turns out the reason she didn't chew on the zipper part was because, I don't know if you can tell, but there are threads here. There was a little wooden medallion here that said, SSK 2018, Super Summer Knit Together 2018. So that was what made it a souvenir. Gone. So I messaged Amy Beth and said, my rascal dog ate my thing. Do you have any more? Can I buy another one? And she said that she would send me one, and so I sent her my address, and I'm hoping to get it, and I'm going to put it back on. I have had to be more careful with my bags. Just having a zipper bag is not sufficient to keep Pearl. Pearl is my 18-month-old German Shepherd, who's still a puppy, but she's giant and beautiful and sweet, and a rascal. She's a rascal. So it turns out having a zipper bag doesn't help either, because this is the zipper bag my socks are in. I'll show you my socks soon, but notice there's no zipper pull anymore. This is my Little Bobbin's bunny bag. But my Little Bobbin's bunny bag no longer has a zipper that works. So I can't leave my bags anywhere that she can get them, even if they're zipped up. So that's the update on the Pearl situation. I guess I'm not fully trained yet, and I'm going to be. I do not have, since I rushed, rushed to come up here right after I got home. I did not even stop to make myself another cup of coffee, so I just have some water because I always need to drink something. So anyway, hi everybody. It's Tuesday morning, and we're a little busy this week. We are getting ready for our annual week in North Carolina. We go to the Outer Banks with Dennis's family. Every year in September, we go after Labor Day, so it's cheaper. Nobody in that house has children still living with them, or we don't have to worry about school or anything like that, so we can go after Labor Day, and it's much cheaper. It's a 12-bedroom house. It costs about $6,500 for the week we get it. But at the height of the season, it's over $13,000. So it's a huge difference in cost per room. I don't think we'll stay in this house next year because we did not fill up the house this year. A couple people weren't able to come that came last year. So we're looking for a smaller house for next year, which is a bit of a surprise to me. My mother-in-law is actively hunting. I mean, I think she really enjoys looking at these houses on the internet and, you know, finding a new house. And she's picked a new house for next year that's brand new this year and smaller. But I'm a little surprised she's doing that because all year long, my in-laws were saying they may not come. Now, we go on this vacation with Dennis's family, and everybody who comes is related in one way or another to Dennis's parents. Dennis's dad is 101 and his mother's 87. And so he has cousins coming from his father's side of the family. His dad is the last one of that generation on that side of the family. And so he has nieces that come to spend time with him. And their cousins and, you know, everybody. And then on my mother-in-law's side, her brother and his wife come, and sometimes some of his children come, which are Dennis's cousins on the other side. So this house is full of cousins, some of whom are not related to each other because, but they're all related to my mother-in-law and father-in-law. Anyway, my father-in-law's 101. He doesn't travel well. He's not, you know, he's a kind of a little bit of a grumpy guy these days. And so I was not surprised to hear they were thinking about not coming this year because he's just been getting tireder and grumpier. And he doesn't even go and visit my sister-in-law who lives an hour away anymore. She comes to him all the time. So I was surprised, so I wasn't surprised to hear they were thinking about not coming. But they are coming. The plan is that they will come. Dennis and I will caravan down with them, and we'll switch drivers with my mother-in-law. And his cousin was going to help drive. I'm not sure if she's still doing that. It's a little bit up in the air. But either way, they're going, which is good. I mean, I just can't imagine his dad staying up here in Pennsylvania. We're in southeastern Pennsylvania, while all his family is down there, and he's the center of attention when he's down there, so I wasn't surprised that he was going to try to come. And so they're coming. The thing that does surprise me is how intent my mother-in-law is to find a new house for next year. I thought for sure they were going to say, we're not doing this anymore. But they're not saying that. Well, she's not anyway. She's looking for a new house, a smaller house, because we weren't able to fill up the house this year. But it'll still be lovely, though, and we're looking forward to it, although we do have there are a couple tropical storms out there that could affect our vacation. But unless we have to evacuate, all it means is I have to bring more knitting, because I'm going to be knitting. Of course, I was going to be knitting anyway. Let's face it. I'm knitting there. So that's coming up. So we're getting ready for that, and so we'll be in North Carolina next week. And that should be fun, especially if the weather cooperates, because there's nothing like a sea breeze. The house is right on the ocean, so I can sit and knit and look at the ocean and listen to the ocean, and walk on the beach, that kind of stuff. So should be fun. While I'm in North Carolina, I will be celebrating my second podiversary. So September 10th, it will be my second anniversary of starting this podcast. And so next time I podcast, I will be announcing a giveaway. I don't know what the prize will be because I'm going to buy it while I'm down in North Carolina. I've told this story before, but maybe you don't want to go back whenever it was because I don't remember when it was anyway. But I started knitting because I was making jewelry. And my sister-in-law, who also goes to North Carolina, was making jewelry, the two of us. And she suggested, and this was 6 years ago, that she found a yarn shop. And she thought maybe it would have some cool yarn that we could incorporate into our jewelry making. So I went into this gorgeous yarn shop called Knitting Addiction. It has since moved from where it was when we were first there. And I just wandered around that store with all that gorgeous yarn and said to myself, I need to learn how to knit so I can buy this yarn. So that's how I started knitting. But I taught myself how to knit using YouTube videos. And the next year, when we went to North Carolina, I bought a sweater's quantity of yarn and cast on a sweater while I was on vacation in the Outer Banks. So I am going back to Knitting Addiction while we are down there, and I will be buying the prize, the second anniversary prize for the giveaway. So, and I'll be giving more information about that in the next podcast because I haven't thought about it too much other than I get to go shopping because I don't really need anything, but it's a prize. It's a prize. And Knitting Addiction has a, sentimental value. Ugh, it always makes my nose itch. Okay. So, I don't know what else to talk about. It is the year of the sweater. We still have a knit along, and I will be also drawing a prize for that. Did I just say that? I might have just said that. Sorry if I'm repeating myself. So I'm soon going to draw a prize from the finished objects. So if you have sweaters that you haven't posted yet, post them. And I will be drawing a prize. I'm sure the prize for that will come from this room because I have lots of stuff. But I thought the second anniversary giveaway should come from Knitting Addiction. I thought that would be appropriate. So I started this podcast really quickly, as I've said, and so I did not put my new finished socks on my sock blockers. I have my old finished socks on my sock blockers because I haven't started wearing my new socks that I have made. But I have 2 FOs for today's podcast, and the first one I'm going to show you are these socks that I was getting so tired of. They have been sitting around. I cast these socks on in the fall of last year, and then I lost my sock mojo. So these, the pattern is Socks with Holes In by Lee Christensen. Lou Lee, she's got a podcast. Her podcast was the very first podcast that I saw. And I have a second one here, which I will put on the other sock blocker. Now, I could not find the tag for this. Total lie. I just found it. It was sitting right here. So this yarn is from Flying Goat's Farm. It's such a cute goat. And it's the Cory sock base, which is Corriedale and nylon, and the colorway is called Red Flannel, which I believe is a very perfect name for this color, which is just like that red flannel shirt or whatever. It's getting a little blown out. It looks a little pinker than it is. It's red and black. And these are very squishy socks, and I'm very glad to be able to try knitting with Corriedale. This is the first time I've knit with Corriedale, and that fleece that I bought from Maryland Sheep and Wool this year is Corriedale, but I haven't spun any of it yet, so I haven't had a chance to use it. But I'll be very interested to see how this wears. It's nice and squishy. It's a lovely pattern, socks with holes in. Now I did mess up a few things on this sock because it was so long since I started it. I forgot that I was knitting this on zeros. And I had cast on, I think I had cast on 68 stitches. And I didn't remember that. So when I went to do my Vanilla is the New Black heel, I didn't pick the right chart because I didn't remember how many stitches I had, and I hadn't counted them. Why would I? And then I made a mistake and I did the chart. I was reusing a chart I had used before, and I forgot where I was. So I ended up actually making the heel much shorter than it typically is. It only goes to here, and typically it would be like that big. But as it turned out, I tried on the socks, and the socks fit me perfectly fine, so I didn't mess it up. It was just really weird. But in the process of doing that, because I forgot how many stitches I had, I ended up with fewer stitches on the foot, which is okay because I do like a tight foot, and as I say, the socks fit me fine. I love the way this yarn just did its own thing here. I'm really digging it. And the side, I guess that's the gussety part. Anyway. So I am very glad to have these socks off the needles, I have to tell you, because I never had socks on the needles that long, and you know, I know some people have lots of sock whips, and you know, but for me, I usually only have one sock going at a time. So I had 2 socks going for a while because these have been on my needles since the fall, and I've finished 2 pairs of socks in the last 3 months or so. So I did have 2 pairs of socks going, but I now have finished these, and so I no longer have 2 pairs of socks going. So anyway, finish object number 1, and finished object number 2 is my Copenhagen Calling Cowl by Isabel Kramer. And this is it kind of close up. I blocked it. I blocked the lacy part. I did not really do much blocking on the other part, but it came out beautiful. I love the colors. This yarn is Dream in Color yarn. One part is Chili Cashmere and the other one is Smushy Cashmere, and I don't know which is which. The beige is a single ply and the blue is a multiple ply, probably a 3 ply, but I'm not sure. Maybe, I don't know. Could be a 4 ply. And it didn't have color names, but this is the yarn that the lovely Mean Girls gave me when they came and stayed with us after Rhinebeck last year. It was their thank you gift, and I love the colors. I loved them together. So when I saw the Copenhagen Calling by, if you look at I'll put a pattern here because I didn't nailed it, but you can see that I mean a picture. You can see that these colors are almost exactly what Isabel Kramer made hers in. I think this is a little more beigey. Hers might have been gray, but it really reads just like hers now. So it's a big cowl. This is not going to work well. I can tell you right now, I'm sure it's not. I had a lot of trouble actually styling it for that picture. It seems like I'm not sure how to do this where the inside just doesn't show more than the outside. And I don't know why that would be. But maybe I need to just turn it inside out and put it on that way. But since it's mosaic, it really does look better on the right side. So I do need to be in front of a mirror to style it if I care, like if I'm wearing it with an outfit as opposed to staying warm in the winter time. But it's nice and big, and it's big enough for me to wrap it around 3 times. And this is going to be so amazing walking the dog. I'm looking at myself, so I'm sorry I'm not looking in the camera. So this is gonna mess up my hair. Should have thought of that. I could have gone for my walk. So what I did differently here than the pattern is one of my problems that I have with these kind of KALs, which, you know, and the way this is constructed is you cast on one end, you do the ribs, and then you do the mosaic, and you do the lace, and then you cast off. And so you have this big, giant thing that you're doing. And I always have a problem with my cast on and my bind off being different stretchiness. And I think it's my cast on is usually tighter. I'm not sure. So what I did was, well, I read some of the comments, and thank you for people who put notes in Ravelry. It's such a nice thing. So there was one woman who did an I-cord cast on and an I-cord bind off, and that's what I did. That I-cord cast on takes a long time. The bind off too. But anyway, so this has worked out really well. Now I do feel like the two sides, you know, they're not exactly the same. You know, but part of it is, and I'm apparently saying you know a lot, is the lace versus the ribbing. That's going to make a big difference. I did go down a size of a needle to do the lace, and I think I did this in a size 8, but I'm not positive. I went down a size to do the lace, and then I went back up to an 8 to do the bind off, because I just was worried. But you can see when I hold it like this that there's still a difference, but it's not obvious. Well, when I wear this, partly because it's so big that you wrap it around so many times. The ones that really show are the smaller ones, like the 3-color cashmere KAL. But the first KAL I did had a big difference between the cast on, and it was a wrap around twice KAL. So it's not just the little KALs. But anyway, I am so excited about this. And it is so soft and squishy because these yarns have cashmere in them. 20% cashmere. My knitting is very fuzzy these days. So I'm so excited. So this is Copenhagen Calling by Isabel Kramer. Loved every minute of knitting it. And I'm so happy with how it turned out, I must say. So I am looking forward to the chillier weather and walking the dog with this amazing KAL. Thank you, ladies, for the gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous yarn. I really appreciate it. And I love my KAL. So the other thing I finished, which I'm the worst, I did not take a picture when I finished it. I finished the Flower Fairy by Susan B. Anderson, which I made for my Isabel for her 5th birthday. She turned 5 last week. She's in kindergarten now, and she lives in Florida. So my knitting for her will change. So I made her the Flower Fairy. My son, I texted my son, did the package come? Oh yeah, and he texted me this picture back of Isabel. I have no idea what's going on here, but she liked the Flower Fairy. Dress up day? I don't know. I'm not sure. But anyway, so I finished that, and I do not have a good picture of that, and I apologize for that. So, but I have been doing a lot of knitting, and after I finished my Cory socks in my bag that doesn't zip anymore, I started another pair of socks. And I am making my dearest, loveliest Elizabeth socks. This pattern, and the pattern is by Knitterarium. And this pattern was a gift to me quite a while back from the lovely Linda in our group. Thank you again, Linda. It was such a sweet thing. And so they have a stitch pattern going up, and they have heels and toes in contrasting yarn. So I am making this in Yakagani yarns. I love her yarn, but I've never used her sock. This is the Mon Sock heel and toe set. And I bought this, actually, I bought this 2 years ago because I was talking about this yarn on my very first podcast, and I did not know how to say Yakagani. And you can see why. Yakagani. I had never heard of the Yakagani River. And the reason I remember this is because my friend Kay watched my first podcast, and she, I'm sure, has not watched since because she's not a knitter. But she watched the first one, and she told me how to pronounce Yakagani. So that's how I know. I've had this yarn for over 2 years. The colorway is called Connellsville Strong. Connellsville is a town in western Pennsylvania. And I imagine that their school colors are blue and white. They had some flash flooding and things like that. So this was a fundraiser that she did. And part of the proceeds for this yarn went to her town, which is Connellsville, Pennsylvania. So I bought it. And I don't often make contrasting heels and toes. And especially these have a heel flap and gusset, which I haven't made since my first couple of pairs of socks. Since I discovered doing 2 at a time on 1 needle, because I started out making socks 2 at a time on 2 needles and doing them in tandem. And those I did a heel flap and gusset, if that's what the pattern called for. But once I started doing my socks 2 at a time on 1 needle, I started doing a fish lips kiss heel or a short row heel or an afterthought heel after that, because it's too hard to do on 2 at a time on 1 needle. But I had gotten these flexi flips. I did fiber share last year, and the woman who I was sending my package to had requested flexi flips, which you could not find anywhere. This is such a nice pattern, but it's hard to see in this yarn, but I know it's there. She had requested them, and so I ordered her. So I had to order it from Great Britain. And they're technically not flexi flips. They call them something else in Europe. I ordered myself a set. I knit on ones, so I ordered ones. And I haven't done anything with them. And I thought, well, I'll try the flexi flips. I'll try doing socks 1 at a time, which I've never done. And I will do the pattern as it's written with the heel flap and gusset. That's my plan. I got this far because this is how far the pattern says to go before you start your heel. So I haven't started the heel yet. The jury's still out on these needles. Now, I don't like double-pointed needles, so if you're a double-pointed person, don't pay any attention to me. I do magic loop 2 at a time. I'm finding it awkward and a little hard to figure out how to position them so that they don't drive me crazy. But I got this far and it went pretty fast. So, but the next thing is I got to start with the new color and do the heel flap and gusset. And as you can see, I didn't do that. I put this down and I cast on a whole new project. So, like I said, the jury's still out about how I feel about the needles. These are the ones that are a little bit like DPNs, but they've got they're bendy in the middle, and you get 3. So you put 2 on the work, and then you're you know, doing the knitting with 1. I haven't dropped the one that finishes nearly as often as I thought I would, because I knit everything using a circular needle. So it's, you know, I drop the needle and do stuff, and you know, so, which is one of my problems with DPNs. I'm always dropping the needle. So I have dropped the needle, but not as much as I expected to. And I wish you could see that. Oh, there you can. Maybe a little bit. This cute little pattern on this. And this is very fun to knit, very quick. I mean, of course, I'm only doing one sock, so maybe it's not so quick. It's hard for me to tell because normally I'm doing them 2 at a time. So, who knows? But anyway, I've stopped at the heel. So if I haven't gotten past the heel in the next podcast, then you'll know that the needles were a little bit of a barrier. And also I have to think, because I haven't done a heel flap and gusset in years. 4 years maybe at least. Oh, there's the zipper. I was afraid, well, it's not the whole zipper, but the piece of the zipper fell in. I was afraid Pearl ate it, but there it is. Part of it fell into the bag. She's such a rascal. Luckily for her, she's a sweet, sweet, cuddly dog. Anyway, thank you, Linda, for the wonderful pattern. I'm really enjoying knitting it. I hope, and if I hesitate much longer on starting that heel, I'm gonna switch to Magic Loop on another needle that I like better, because I do want these socks. And I'm very interested to see how I feel about the heel flap and gusset, knitting it again, now that I have a lot more knitting experience than I did when I knit my first socks. And I'll see how I feel. But anyway, so that was one new cast on. Now here's my not new cast on. I did work on my portage. Oops, that is my new cast on. I did work on my portage cardigan. The portage is a wonderful sweater by Melissa Shashwari that I tried on at SSK and loved. But it has this back, and this back is a wonderful waffle squishy fabric. I love the way it feels. The problem is I'm not loving knitting it. So that's kind of a drag. But, oops, there's my tag for my socks. I don't want to lose it, or I won't be able to talk about it next podcast. So here is my portage. I have made progress. Podcaster failure. I don't think I put a progress creeper where I was. But I think I was about here or so. So I think I've done 5 inches since the last podcast. And I will tell you, my knitting to tinking back is probably 70% knitted and 30% unknitted. So since that first conversation I had with you about that whole row that was wrong, and I tore it back because I wanted it right, I have had to tear back. I haven't torn it back since then, but I have unknit several rows more than once so that I could do it right. For some reason, I lose my concentration, or I can't read this knitting. It's not so easy to read this knit. This yarn. Oh, the yarn is Cloudborne yarn, which is Craftsy's brand. And it's the Alpaca Wool Silk DK. It's so yummy. I am concerned about how it's going to, elongate and everything, because it is 45% alpaca, 25% merino, and 30% silk. So it is a dreamy, soft yarn. It's very lovely. I am a little concerned that it's going to be too drapey or elongate itself or something. But I got a lifeline in there. I am loving the back, and it is so thick and textury and lovely. I just wish I could keep my mind on my knitting enough that I didn't have to keep unknitting it. But I have decided that this is not a quick project, but when it's done, I'm going to be happy with it. And my knitting is for fun, and so I knit on it a little while, and then I go do something that I find more fun. But I really do want the sweater. So, and I'm actually considering making another one eventually out of yarn that I feel much more confident in how it will hold up with that sweater pattern. Because I'm loving that squishy textury back. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. And it has pockets, which I'm a big fan of. So, shortly after I recorded my last podcast, my sister came from California. Well, she came from Idaho. She's in the process of moving to Idaho. So she came from Idaho, and I picked her up, and we drove up to my parents, and my dad had his 87th birthday. And we had a very nice visit, and it was lovely. And that I decided it's time for me to start working on my mother's next sweater. Now, I bought the yarn for my mother's next sweater at the Allentown Fiber Festival, and I showed it to you at the time. It is from Twisted Yarn and Fiber, and it is alpaca yarn, not alpaca, Angora yarn. So it is 25% Angora, 60% merino, and 15% silk. Let me tell you, this yarn is so lovely and soft. Oh, it looks almost like a little green there. It's not. It's gray. Really, really, really lovely and soft. And not cheap. I forget how much I paid. But I am making my mother the campside cardie with this gorgeous yarn. This is by Alicia Plummer. And it's basically a beautiful open cardigan, which is what the style my mother wanted. And it's got eyelet detail, yarn over details that go from relatively widely spaced to less widely spaced. And then you change needles and you go up a size of needle, and then you do, and they're very closely spaced at the bottom. So I cast this on the other day. I need to look at my Instagram to see what day it was, but I think it might have been Friday, because I had swatched to make a different cardigan. I was going to make the Heartfelt cardigan, which is in the Interpretations 3, Volume 3 by Vera Velimaki. But my gauge was so off that I just couldn't deal with it. So I put my gauge in the search engine on Ravelry, and I don't know if you've ever done that, but you can put gauge in. And so I put gauge in for cardigan and found patterns that the cardigan was made at my gauge, which was great. So I found the campside cardie, which I have been interested in knitting for myself for quite a while, so I bought it and started knitting on it, and I have not stopped. So I am well beyond where I am with the portage for my mother's sweater, but my mother's smaller than me, so the rows go really quickly. But I have enjoyed knitting this sweater. I cannot tell you. First of all, the yarn is great, although it's not perfect. A couple of things with this yarn. One, I'm finding quite a bit of veg matter in it. So as I'm going along, I'm picking straw out of the yarn. I'm going to have to tell my mother, if you feel a little itch, check your sweater. You might have a piece of straw in there that I missed, but I have been pulling out quite a bit of veg matter. The other thing is, oh my gosh, I got rabbit fur all in my nose, in my mouth. So, I mean, you can, I don't know if you can you see that halo? This is a fuzzy, yummy, soft yarn, and she's going to love the sweater. Now, I don't know what I did right before, well, I was drinking a Cosmo last night. Not the best plan, and I messed up something, and so I have to go back and fix it. I had a couple drop stitches and whatever, so podcast or fail, I'm not at the end of a row. But you can still get the idea because it is perking along. So I obviously have split for the sleeves. I'm actually in the last section at the bottom, and then I'll go to a smaller needle and do the ribbing, and then come back. And the sleeves are plain stockinette, and so I'll be knitting the sleeves, and then come back and do the collar. It's not really a collar. It's just a band all the way up and around. And so I should be pretty much done. Veg matter. Pretty much done with this sweater. I'm definitely, well, it's going with me to North Carolina. And a very strange stitch right there. You see that? I don't know what happened. I think if I just put my needle through that. Anyway, she's going to love it. I'm enjoying every minute of knitting this. Let me tell you. Oh my gosh. Even picking out the veg matter. I don't care. I'm really enjoying this. Knitting this sweater. And, I mean, you can see. I swear, I probably started it on Friday. Possibly Thursday. Today's Tuesday. And I haven't knit on it at all today yet. But I'm loving the sweater. And I will be making a campsite cardi for myself. I might figure out how to add pockets to it because I am interested in having pockets. But this is knitting up so beautifully. And it is also in a sweater bag from the Fat Squirrel. This is the Hugga bag that she had last year. So this, I'm looking forward to having my fire. I'm looking forward to cooler weather because it is still hot around here. I'm looking forward to sea breezes. On the beach in North Carolina. Even if I'm not looking forward to a house full of people. It's going to be a lot of people. There'll probably be 18 people there. So, 16 people there, at least. So, but luckily the house is big and there are lots of places that you can take your knitting and sit by yourself and nobody will bother you or find you, even. So that's what I'm knitting on, and I'm really loving that campsite cardi. It just is zipping off my needles. Partly, I'm sure, because I'm making a size 35.5 instead of 44, which is what I would make for myself. But, I mean, that has a big impact on how much you knit. But it's just going so fast, and I'm enjoying it so much. And it is quite a contrast to how I feel while I'm knitting the portage, which is kind of too bad, but that's how it is. So I will be taking lots of knitting with me to Nag's Head. I will definitely be taking my portage, and hopefully I will be making some progress on that so that it's closer to finished when the cool air comes. I don't know. I'll find something else to bring that I haven't started yet because I don't have a shawl on the needles anymore or a cowl. Oh, you know what? I'm gonna take some yarn to make hats. I need a hat. I need to make some hats. I lost my hat in Chile. It blew off my head and over a cliff. I was sick. That was my color work hat that I made in my class with Susan B. Anderson. I have found the pattern, at least, you know, because I got a hard copy pattern at the class, and I have found that pattern. So I will be able to make another one, and I should, because it's the only color work I've done. Color work was on my list for this year. Maybe I will end up making a color work sweater eventually. That would be fun. And I do have patterns for color work sweaters that I want to make. I want to make the Humulus by Isabel Kramer. I already bought that pattern, I'm pretty sure. And anyway, so I need to think about what I'm going to bring to Nag's Head. Dennis is thinking about the cooking stuff that he wants to do down there and what he's going to need to bring to do it. And what I'm thinking about is my knitting, because, you know, it's not like we're going to be in the middle of nowhere. Whatever, if we forget something, we can bring it. So I'm worried about my knitting. Of course, I can buy yarn too, which I will be. So I can't think of anything else I should be talking about, so I'm going to stop talking and wish you all a wonderful, wonderful couple of weeks until I podcast again. I might be doing a little vlog type things while I'm there, but I don't think I'll have good enough internet to upload anything onto YouTube or anything like that, and I won't have my editing stuff. So my next podcast, I'll try to include some scenes from the Outer Banks in North Carolina, and I'll be thinking about you guys, and I hope you have a wonderful time, and I hope you have lots and lots of time to do the crafting that brings you joy. And I'll talk to you in a couple weeks.